Ukrainians seize a great opportunity brought by Wagner Mutiny war in Ukraine explained. The Wagner Mutiny is a term used to describe a series of events that involved the Russian private military group, Wagner Group. Since the beginning of the conflict, this paramilitary group has been active in Ukraine. On June 25, 2023, an unexpected turn of events created a unique opportunity. Many people were suspicious of Depo 187 and the rapid and peaceful conflict resolution between the Russian Ministry of Defense and the private military company Wagner Group. It was expected, but no confirmation of precautions being met left many people skeptical. Analysts began to build theories on how a smaller-scale act might be used to achieve strategic goals. The Wagner forces returning from Moscow were close to the Belgrade area. This would make it a good opportunity to redeploy troops to this region. This is a reasonable possibility, as both sides closely monitor each other's troop movements. The only way to surprise the other side is to trick them into believing they need not be concerned. Ukrainian intelligence agencies were provided critical information regarding internal conflicts within the Wagner Group. There were reports that Wagner's involvement in Ukraine had led a faction to turn against its leaders. The Wagner Mutiny marked a turning point in the conflict. The Ukrainian forces were able to take advantage of the situation. The Wagner Group's internal conflict weakened its effectiveness, giving the Ukrainian military an advantage. After receiving the intelligence, Ukrainian troops launched successful operations against the weakened Wagner Group. The Ukrainian military was able to retake several strategically important locations previously controlled by Wagner. This development has given the Ukrainian people renewed hope and optimism. The Wagner Group's recent defeat has given them the boost they needed in their fight for sovereignty and independence. The Wagner Mutiny had a significant impact on Russia's position in Ukraine. Firstly, only some of the Wagner forces headed north. The majority of troops were occupying Rostov and military objects in the vicinity. As a result, the Wagner forces dispersed. Second, Wagner's forces are relatively small. Prigozhin said he took Bakhmut with 85,000 soldiers, which took over 8 months and many Bogman losses. Kharkiv is 10x bigger than the Horaki front, and even though the Ukrainians are in the area with tens of thousands of soldiers, it is unlikely that they would win quickly. The Russians had tried to capture Kharkiv in better conditions and with more troops, but they failed. Wagner forces are initially located in Luhansk. Therefore, a detour of several days towards Moscow would be less effective. Other analysts have concluded that Wagner forces were redeployed in Belarus to attack Kyiv and Lviv. It is also a good fit because the Belarus president, Lukashenko, got involved and offered shelter as a precaution. All previous arguments are still valid here. Rostov's occupation would have a counterproductive effect on dispersing troops. The front line is 30x larger. Ukrainians are armed with tens of thousands of soldiers. Russians tried it anyway, but the dense forest was a difficult barrier. In addition, Russian forces also lost 15 pilots and 7 aircraft during the mutiny. Half of these are extremely valuable. This does not include the violent confrontations between the regular Russian forces and the Wagner convoys captured on video. The Wagner Mutiny did achieve one thing: it cut off the supplies to the Eastern Russian forces for 2 days. It also confused the soldiers, which Ukrainians took advantage of. Ukrainian fighters in the Bakhmut area reported that when Prigozhin uploaded a video and stated that regular Russian forces had bombed Wagner camps while the Wagner forces marched on Moscow, the Russian radio exchanges went wild. This led to violent confrontations between regular Russian formations and a few Wagner units still in Bakhmut. Ukrainian fighters of the 24th Assault Brigade first reported. The Ukrainians finally broke through the Russian tree line on the road and began storming their last fortification on their way up to Klishivka, the famous trench network. After clearing the tree line, Ukrainians could attack Russian positions from both sides. By the end of Day 2, the Ukrainian 5th Assault Brigade had cleared 40% of the forest. Ukrainians finally drove Russians out of their remaining positions west of the canal. Some sources claimed that Ukrainians had even made some attempts to take control over Kurdymyevka, Ozaryanivka, and other areas. Russian forces have retreated into the western part to create a gray zone. The biggest news is that Ukrainians have crossed the Dnieper River to establish a bridgehead near the Antoninsky Bridge on the eastern side. The footage confirms the presence of Ukrainian forces in this area. Direct assaults by Russian forces were used to drive Ukrainians from the area. They still need support from the staff. Ukrainians have posted videos of Ukrainian helicopters attacking Russian assault units. Russian sources eventually reported that the units were almost surrounded, so they retreated. The Ukrainian president said that the Wagner Mutiny provided unique opportunities to the Ukrainians, which could lead to one of the most significant turning points in this war's history. I first look at events covered by at least 12 reputable sources to identify events that could bring about such massive changes. Second, I evaluate the story's bias. Right-leaning media outlets are more likely to cover bad news about Ukraine than left-leaning media outlets. The story about the aftermath of the Prigozhin mutiny is slightly left-leaning, so a closer look is required. The Wagner Mutiny also has significant political implications. The Wagner Mutiny revealed the internal divisions in Russia and raised concerns about the loyalty and control of private military contractors. This incident could strain Russia's relations with other countries dependent on these groups. The fact that Ukrainians crossed the Dnepro River and created a bridgehead close to the Antonovsky Bridge on the eastern bank is, by far, the most significant development. The Ukrainian military has been stationed in this area by Ukrainian boats. Direct assault attempts by Russian forces to drive Ukrainians away were met with fierce resistance. Russian assault units were targeted by Ukrainian helicopters, according to a video shared online. Russian sources eventually claimed that the forces on the ground decided to retreat because they were nearly encircled. As the war continues in Ukraine, it's important to understand the importance of events like the Wagner Mutiny. The conflict is complex and challenging. However, recent events have given Ukrainians new hope and determination for their future. The Wagner Mutiny is more evidence of how divided, demoralized, and weakened Russia is due to Putin's disastrous invasion of Ukraine. The Russian ruler may soon face serious home issues that will overshadow the possibility of loss in Ukraine, as his authority is now quickly eroding. It took time to determine which of these now unverifiable news reports was accurate and which resulted from a resurgence of interest. The Ukrainian military ministry neither confirmed nor rejected the reports of a Ukrainian advance. What will happen tomorrow? Do you believe it will significantly impact the war in Ukraine? No one knows because you can expect anything from both sides during the war. So, stay with us as we regularly bring you authentic news from the battleground.